Hello everyone, welcome back to my studio and welcome to a brand new series on this channel where I break down some of my original productions and remixes to give you a closer insight as to how I made them. So the first track up for breakdown treatment will be my remix of Kubrick by Jeremy Isma and Alistor, which came out in February on Jee Productions. So if you want to check the full track out, the final version, you can do so in the description. I'll put a link there for you. So let's just dive right in. I'll go through all the elements in the track and explain how I made them to the best of my ability. Okay, so let's just start with the intro here. Let's just start with the kick, shall we? So, and hopefully my computer doesn't glitch out too bad. So the kick, I have an 808 style kick, which I split into two kicks. So the low kick is just filtered down, just playing the lower frequencies. Then I have a top kick, which I like to click, and vice versa, all the low ends cut out. Both these are going over to this kick bus here with a little bit of EQ, just rolling off the very low end, rolling off some of the top end. And then I apparently dipped out some frequencies here at 130 and 145. Maybe there is a little bit of muddiness there. I can't remember. And then I just followed that with some compression just to tighten those two layers together. And so that's the kick. And then that's going through these parallel tracks. So I have some parallel compression here. I have some distortion and also a reverb. I don't usually these days run my kick through reverb, but apparently I did in this case. And the reverb send is just a EQ to roll off the tops and the lows, a little bit of distortion, and then a short room setting, which, you know, most of the drums are going through all these three parallel tracks here. And then it's being fed into this drum bus with some tape saturation. And I just like that warm tape sound. A little bit of the 1176 compressor. This is mostly for the color, but just to tighten all the drums up, glue them together a little bit, and again add that color. And then a little bit of EQ on the drum bus here. So it looks like I have some mid-side action going on here. The side frequencies are low cut quite aggressively, and then a little bit of a top lift in the side frequencies as well to bring out the perceived width a little bit in the drums. And then I have another reverb on the actual drum bus to use in the arrangement, and then a filter as well to use in the arrangement for low cutting and whatnot. So yeah, that's what's happening there with the kick, and then just my parallel tracks for the drums. And what else is in the intro? We have this 1/8 hi-hat. Very, very simple, just playing eighth notes. And I have just the low, or all the low end rolled off, don't need that at all. And rolled off the top end too, just to make a room for the other hi-hats in there and just kind of tuck down low. Yeah, and then I have this hi-hat loop here. Now this hi-hat loop was part of the stems provided for this remix. And what I did, cause I bounced this to audio, I remember. But what I did here was I took the original loop, I made a copy of it, I panned one left, I panned one right, and I played them in slightly different timings, so or positions and sequences. So they're both playing in slightly different sequences. And then I did some filter modulation and some pitch modulation as well, and then bounce that out to audio, just to kind of put my own little flavor to it and not just throw the original stem in there. So that's what I did there. And then let's head into, I just want to see. And it looks like I also, after I bounced it out, I did a little bit of EQing just to take away some harsh frequencies. So yeah. Okay, and then let's talk about this bass here. Now, this sub bass pretty much plays throughout the whole track, and it just rolls along and really gives the track a nice energy and a nice push. And that's what it sounds like on its own. I mean, other than the occasional low cut, it pretty much does the same thing throughout. So how I made that is I took a piece of the stems that was provided, one of the bass stems, and I pulled that into direct wave sampler and looped that up, I think over a half bar. And then once I found a nice groovy loop point that was working with my kick, I added some side chain, and I bounced it out. And then added, looks like a little bit of compression. Also, there's a little bit of pitch modulation that's going up in pitch over a half bar. You can hear it without the pitch and with. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail as to how I made that. I've made 2 videos on my YouTube channel where I cover in depth how I make bass lines like this. So I'll put those up in the card if you want to go check those out for more detail after you watch this video. So I also have a couple parallel tracks set up for my bass line, same, so just parallel compression, some chorusing, and some distortion, and then a reverb, which is for the bass stabs, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the next thing that's in the intro is this atmospheric type sound. I believe this was also part of the original stem, or it was an original stem, and then I think I ran it through a couple different delays, added some distortion, and then rebounced it out, if I remember right. And that's just being, I EQ'd it, rolled off the lows, rolled off the tops, took away a couple little frequencies there, and then that's just being filtered in and out throughout the arrangement to kind of help build the tension and energy. But pretty simple. Okay, and then okay, then we got the claps kicking in there. Let's have a look at the claps. So these are made up of 3 layers, it looks like. So the first layer, oops, yeah, just a really low level, kind of distorted, rough sounding clap that's just tucked down right low in the mix. But it looks like what I did here, looks like this was a stereo clap, but what I did is I made a copy of it, and I only took the left channel on one and the right channel on the other. So I took the right channel on this one and just the left channel on this one, which leaves you with a similar but different sound. And that's something I like to do to create just a slight variation between claps. Because I'll take a stereo clap and just take the left side for one and the right side for the other. So that's what I did there. And let's see this layer. See if I can find this. So looks like this one is, yeah, occurring right before the beat. And you can see here that on this first clap, the release is pulled in slightly compared to the second clap. And also the first clap is filtered down slightly, so just taking away a little bit of the top end on the first one, just to create that pop, pop, enhance the groove by a slight variation between the claps. So that's what's happening there. And then I have one more layer. If I could find it. There it is. And so this one, it's like more of the top end kind of snap. Again, this is also occurring before the beat. But all these are placed slightly different. Looks like this one's nudged forward a little bit more, so the transients all don't line up and they're not sitting right on top of each other. So you have space for everything to kind of poke through. And that's just providing a little bit more of that top end energy. This one is. And then all those together. Now, there is some processing as well. All the claps are going to this clap group here, with some EQ to duck out some harsh or unwanted frequencies around the 2K mark, and then a little bit of a more kind of vintage style EQ where I rolled off the low end and then added a little boost in the 2.5 area. That's without the EQ there. And then just some subtle compression, yeah, medium attack and of a slower release to help just gel all those things together. And again, all my drums are going through these parallel tracks over here. Okay, so that's the claps there. The next thing I have is this little percussion loop. So that's this guy right here. So this is some random percussion loop that I looped up kind of the same way that I did with the sub bass. I just found a nice loop point, a really small loop length, so it really has this rolling kind of groove. And then I think I pitched it down by an octave or 2 octaves to really kind of create this unique, interesting kind of groove, which just sits really low in the mix, but it just helps kind of that overall energy. You can't really hear it so much in the context of everything playing, but it really does add something special. And I just rolled off the lows because it was competing too much with the bass, and then rolled off the top end. Don't really need the top end for this type of sound. So it's just kind of occupying the mid frequencies. And then I just added this OTT, which is just going to bring up some of the really low level information on the sound. And then it looks like I have some side chaining going on here. Looks like to some of the melodic elements there, and some of the chords and stuff. Looks like it's sidechained against those, and then it's pumping with the kick a little bit as well. So that is this little percussion loop here. The next thing, let's talk about this shaker. One thing, I like this little, just to come in one offbeat before the actual, like, you know, beginning of the next bar. I think is nice. Just a little arrangement tip. Sometimes it's nice to come in slightly before, or you know, or take away something slightly after the listener might expect it to, you know, drop out or come in. Let's see the shaker here. Shaker 1. So on this, honestly, looks like I have some EQ dips there. Yeah, just to kind of tame some harsh frequencies. But to be quite honest with you, I don't remember where this came from or if I did anything to it. So just sounds like just a basic shaker. Nothing special there. Okay, this little guy, this little hi-hat groove. Just EQ'd this, took out some of the harsher frequencies. And then just pan it over to the left a little bit. I believe this was actually one of the stems that was provided. This really heavily side-chained little hat loop, which is tucked down super low in the mix, as you can see there, just to kind of help tie everything together. Yeah. And then I have this main closed hi-hat here. It comes in. So that hat just a basic hi-hat there. Just EQ'd it, so it wasn't so harsh. like there's quite a few frequencies that weren't so nice in that one. Without it and with. And that really just reinforces the counterpart, you know, to the kick on the offbeats. And then I will just touch on this hat verb here. So I kind of made, sometimes I'll do this. I made a separate auxiliary track for the hats as far as the reverb goes. So it's, the hats aren't, looks like they are going over there, but they're sent over to this hat verb here with all the low end rolled off, a short room setting, and then some heavy compression here, and then a little bit of a side chain, which is something I'll do on occasion just to really elevate the highs in the drums. Sometimes it sounds good, sometimes it doesn't, but you hear it without it. And with. Yeah, sometimes if your hats like don't have enough body or presence, or they're just not cutting through enough, sometimes you can try sending them to a separate aux track. Roll off all the lows, obviously, add a little bit of reverb. You can either go for short, tight reverb here, or a longer, kind of sloshier reverb. Compress the hell out of it, add a little side chain, and then mix a little bit of that in with everything else. So that's what's going on there. Let's just finish talking about the rest of drums in this first section of the track. So I have this other little hat groove here. Let's check that out. So I have this little hat groove here, which I made in a similar way to the sub bass and this rolling percussion loop that I showed you. Pretty much did the same thing. And then I just bounced that out once I found a little groove that I liked. And then I added an EQ here, just, yeah, basic EQ. Rolled off the lows and added some sidechain. Yeah, so not much to talk about there, but that gives the track a nice little lift. Okay, so let's see here what else we got in this section. Okay, so this percussion loop here, let's talk about this. I'll just let you hear it in isolation. So this kind of sounds awkward on its own, but in the context of the track, it really makes the groove much more interesting and lively, because it's kind of spread out, and yeah, just it drops in, it drops out of the arrangement, and there's alternating versions which are slightly different. So how I made this was, let's see. I took I found a loop that worked with the track, you know, that I liked the tone and everything was jiving with my groove. And then I threw that into Slicer and then rearranged and reprogrammed the loop to suit my track. And I did a whole nother video on this in one of my earlier videos. So if you want more detail on how to do this, in more depth, I'll put the link up in the card there, so you can go check that out if you want. But that's a nice method I like to use to add, more spaced out kind of little hits and bits to keep the groove interesting. So that's how I made that little perk loop there. Looks like I have another little snare hit here. Yeah, just a nice little snare accent. If I could find it. Yeah, nothing crazy going on there. Just playing on the 16th note. Let's see. Basic EQ, rolling off the lows, kind of rolling off some of the top end. And just a little touch of reverb. That's it. Simple, simple. I've got these little rim shot kind of rolls here, which I think was part of one of the stems. I just chopped a little bit of it and kind of used it here and there as a little fill, and then used it a little bit more extensively as a build-up effect in the breakdown, which I'll get to in a second. Okay, so what else we got? We got this, let's come down here, and we got most of the drums in the first section of the track, so this simple 808 crash. Just a simple low cut. And the chords are introduced here. One thing I missed before we get to those is this little clap double hit here, which kind of works with that snare hit. And so I think when these occur, the little clap hit, I pan the snare whenever it's playing with these little clap hits here. Pan it over to the right. And let's see, I don't think there's anything special going on with that clap. Looks like there's a little bit of EQ, some 16th delay with Fruity Delay 3, and a little bit of reverb as well. So, simple stuff. All right, so we have the chords being introduced here. So these chords here is kind of the main kind of theme and sound of the original track, which was made by Alistor. So I wanted that to be kind of the main melodic focal point of the track. So you can see here they play quite often, and I just made copies of them, and for some of them I just made little reverses just to kind of lead into the actual chord itself. Tucked down really low, but I think it just adds something. And on the reverses, just some EQ, bandpass filter, some reverb, and then some auto panning with a Panomatic. And then the chord itself, kind of have the same thing going on here with the melodic parts, some parallel compression, distortion, and reverb. The parallel compression and the distortion is something I usually add at the very end of the production process when I'm kind of doing more mixing and mastering stuff. But again, yeah, it's set up here. And let's see. I pretty much left the chords as they were because they already sounded great. I just rolled off a little bit of the low end and added some extra side chain, or added some side chain. The main thing that's kind of giving it its own uniqueness for me is this delay send, which is pretty simple though. Just a quarter delay, a little bit of compression, reverb, and then I compressed the reverb and delay signal. And then that's going into some sidechain as well. And those occur throughout the track. Okay. I also have this other secondary atmosphere that comes in and kind of goes up and down in volume throughout the track. It's very low. But what I did here is I took that chord, one of the chord samples that was provided, and again, I pulled that into a sampler. I looped that up. I think I added some distortion. I can't remember exactly what else I did to it. But I made kind of an atmosphere with that chord sample to kind of tuck down low. Okay. So let's continue on. These bass accents come in here now. Which is a really nice contrast to that really kind of static rolling sub bass. Those bass accents, keep the bass interesting, I think. And all that is I think it's like a low percussion hit, and then yeah, and then like a little bass stab. If I remember right, I can't remember because this track is over a year old now. I think this bass stab was part of the original stem, and then I paired it with this little percussive hit. And we got that over here. Oops. So just a little bit of a low cut here. The Moog multi-filter, which is, I think, just moving up and down slightly just to open the top end up a little bit, and a little bit of compression, and some sidechain. And that's also going over to this reverb send, which I mentioned earlier, which is the Valhalla Vintage Verb. A little bit of a low cut, about 1 second, and then I just did a little bit of compression on that, just to bring it out a little bit more. And that's all that's happening with the bass stabs, and those are just doing their thing. Looks like there's just a simple kind of LFO style movement to the filter on those with automation. Okay, so moving on. Got this little clap sound here, this little clap verb to almost used it as an effect, more or less. Yeah, some EQing there, a little bit of reverb, and it looks like I had delay, but I took it off. So EQ, reverb, and a little bit of sidechain. And that's all that's happening on that. It's kind of scattered throughout the arrangement in just a couple spots. Okay, and let's see. Looks like we don't have a new element till here. Got more chords coming in. Got a reverse crash here. Just reverse one of those crashes. Looks like we do have the tom kicks in here. It's just super simple. And the tom. A little EQ, rolled off the lows. A little dip at 260. It's without it. Yeah. And then added a little bit of driver just to beef it up a little bit. Also, this tom hit is going over to this distorted gate auxiliary track, which is essentially just distortion followed by gate. So you cut the tail off, and you're just left with a nice kind of burst of distortion, and that's something that's quite nice to do sometimes. And if you want to, I did another video on that as well. So if you're looking for a little bit more detail on how to set that up, I'll put that up in the description. And that's just playing on the 16th note before beat 3, every bar with a couple little variations here and there. So yeah, that's the tom, super simple. And then yeah, looks like we do have this sustained chord I didn't mention. And I honestly can't remember off the top of my head what I did there. I could find it. I think I made this in massive. I think I just played like a G chord, a long sustained G chord. You could hear there's some wobble that comes in over time, which I use the Moog multi-filter, and there's an LFO built into that, and I just automated up, you know, the mix of the LFO. Had it set just the way I wanted it to sound like, and then I bounced it out. Yeah, so that's the sustained chord, but it does, I think that little chord really plays an important part in the arrangement. little noise sweep here. Reverse noise into a, yeah, with some EQ on that and some delay. Crash comes in again. Looks like we don't have any new elements till here. Sustained chord comes in again. And then the strings come in as well. Hear those strings fading in, just adding to the tension and anticipation, and they just rise slowly in volume all the way up until, you know, where everything kicks back in after the breakdown, and they slowly fade away. So I'm trying to remember where those came from. Okay, so it looks like it's just a string sample that's just looped, and added some reverb to that. Some EQ and some sidechain. And that's just there to help build the tension. And this low string as well, which I think what I did here, yeah. So as we're kind of, that strings are introduced, we're kind of getting ready for the breakdown. And so this stem here, this low string, what I did, so this is what was one of the stems from the remix as well, and I took a section of it here, made a copy of it, reversed it, and then faded in the reversed string slowly to introduce the actual stem for the breakdown. Because it just sounded a little awkward when it just kicked in right away during the breakdown. So I just wanted something to kind of ease it into the breakdown and introduce that sound. And that seemed to work. So we're going into the breakdown now. We do have the rides that kick in here as well. Tucked low in the mix, but it really elevates the whole track. Just a little bit of a basic EQ, cut some of the nasty frequencies out. And yeah, it's a basic kind of alternating velocities on the rides, playing on the offbeats, super simple. And we head into the breakdown. Added a different delay to this clap verb to kind of help introduce the breakdown. Got the string coming in, the low string. full long version of the sustained chord. As well in the breakdown. Like we got a long noise sweep here. Okay, so there's a couple things as far as the effects go. There's just this long sweep, pretty self-explanatory. It's just a white noise sweep. I've covered that on my channel plenty of times. Little cymbal hit here. The delay, excuse me. And another string, which is one of the stems, I believe. I just put this right here in this little section before everything kicks back in to kind of help, you know, build that anticipation even more with some volume automation. Got this little small sweep here. Our reverse crashes. Looks like I added even a second crash here on top of this one. Another little effect sound here, little short riser sound. And so and then also a little drone sound just to help make the breakdown interesting. Kind of a crunchy, distorted, atmospheric type sound. But all these things together work quite nice, I think. And so this is the first time in the breakdown is where the kind of that deep, that saw arpeggio is introduced here. Okay, so this art is made with Monarch. Where are you? It's made with Monarch and 3 saw waves. And what I did is I used the built-in arpeggiator here. So all that's happening, let's see, it's playing just a simple G note. Let me see if I could find the MIDI here. Maybe, there it is. It's just playing a simple G note held out for 8 bars there, as you can see. But in the arpeggiator, it is jumping over 2 octaves, and it has a repeat of 6. And I played it with these settings a little bit. So I already made a video on this in one of my earlier videos, so I'll put that again up in the cards if you want more detail. But I automated just the filter of Monarch to come up and down, a little bit of the reverb automation. And then for this little section here, I kicked up the octave, so it's going to be, I think, playing at a 3 or 4 octave range instead of just 2. And then it jumps back down. And then it's like the timing changes as well. So it's a little bit slower here. Here now it's playing at a higher octave range, and then it kicks back down. And then that's run through this delay here. Which has an EQ on it to roll off the lows and the tops. This replica delay by Native Instruments, playing an 8th dotted with some saturation and a little bit of filter modulation. Space modulator, reverb effect plugin. I love this little guy. It's some crazy cool sounds with this. A little bit of distortion, compress that a little bit, or quite a bit actually, looks like, and then sidechained it, and that's the delay send for the ARP. And then it's the filter's just right down, but this kicks up on occasion. It's more just kind of creating this kind of bubbly, kind of perky texture, and then occasionally the filter opens up on it. And then on the actual sound itself, I have that reverb, which is being automated. Looks like I have a Moog filter on it. I think I'm probably just using this for a little bit of drive, because I believe the filter is being automated on the actual synth itself. Yeah. And then some EQ, just roll off the lows, a little bit of a dip here, add some sidechain to it, and that is it. I think that's pretty much everything in this track. Yeah, the effects are pretty basic. I mean, some of them have reverbs and other delays. This long sweep which plays right before leading into where everything kicks in. Has some additional reverb and a little bit of chorusing on it and some additional delay. So yeah, that is all of the elements within my Kubrick remix. So hopefully you found this useful. Leave me a comment or question, and I'll catch you soon, everyone. Cheers.